My ex-wife poisoned our son against me. Her deathbed confession set him free. I'd 48M, never thought I'd be writing this post. For 15 years, I've lived with the pain of my son believing I abandoned him. Now, everything has changed, and I'm still trying to process what happened. Some days it feels like a dream, others like a nightmare. But I need to share this story, if only to help others who might be going through something similar. It started back when my ex-wife and I divorced. Our son was only 7 at the time, just starting 2nd grade and obsessed with dinosaurs and space. He had this way of lighting up any room he entered, always ready with a random fact about velociraptors or black holes. The split wasn't particularly nasty, at least not on the surface. We agreed to joint custody. I kept the house in the suburbs while she moved to an apartment closer to her work, and I was ready to be the best co-parent I could be. I had no idea what was actually happening behind the scenes. The first few months seemed okay. We had a routine. I'd pick him up from school on Fridays, we'd get pizza and watch movies or play video games, and weekends were filled with trips to the museum or park. He'd tell me about his week, his friends, his classes. Sometimes he'd be a little quiet, but I figured that was normal for a kid dealing with divorce. But then things started changing. It was subtle at first, so subtle I almost missed it. My son became increasingly distant during our weekends together. The excited chatter about school projects turned into one-word answers. When I'd try to hug him goodbye, he'd stiffen up or pull away. Once, I found him crying in his room, but when I tried to comfort him, he pushed me away and said he wanted his mom. I thought maybe he was just processing the divorce in his own way, so I tried to give him space while letting him know I was there. Then came the canceled visits. My ex would call last minute with excuses. He was sick, had a school project, or made plans with friends that couldn't be rescheduled. When I did see him, he seemed angry, defensive. The breaking point came during a dinner at his favorite burger place. He barely touched his food, then looked at me with such hatred in his eyes and said, "I know you never wanted me. Mom told me about the email you sent her before I was born." I was stunned. That wasn't true at all. I'd been overjoyed when we found out we were having a baby. As the months went on, things got worse. He started refusing to come to my house altogether. When I'd try to pick him up from school, he'd run to his mother's car instead. Phone calls went unanswered. Birthday cards were returned unopened. Each rejection felt like a knife to the heart. I tried talking to my ex, but she'd just say, "He's old enough to make his own decisions about seeing you. I'm not going to force him." She always said it with this look of concern, like she was the protective mother shielding her child from a monster. I fought it in court, of course. Spent thousands on lawyers and child psychologists. But during the hearing, my son told the judge he was afraid of me. Said I'd told him he ruined my life, that I had a better family now. At 13, the court considered his wishes. The child psychologist suggested giving him space, saying forcing visits might cause more trauma. So I stepped back, though it killed me to do it. I kept sending letters and cards that went unanswered, leaving voicemails that were never returned. Every holiday was a reminder of what I'd lost. The years that followed were a blur of pain and regret. I stayed in the same town, hoping someday he'd want to know the truth. I kept track of his life from a distance, watching his little league games from my car, sitting in the back row at his high school graduation, seeing his college acceptance announcement in the local paper, driving past the office where he got his first job. I never stopped sending birthday and Christmas cards. Never got a response. Every year on his birthday, I'd add photos and updates about my life to a box in my office, hoping someday he'd want to see them. Dating was nearly impossible. How do you explain to someone that your teenage son thinks you're a monster, and you don't even know why? A few relationships started promisingly but ended when they realized the depth of my emotional baggage. My sister tried setting me up, but my heart wasn't in it. All I could think about was my son. Then 3 weeks ago, I got a call from my ex's sister. My ex was in the hospital, terminal cancer. She wanted to see me. I almost didn't go. 15 years of pain made me hesitate. What could she possibly have to say that would make any difference now? But something told me I needed to hear it. Maybe it was closure, maybe it was hope, maybe it was just morbid curiosity. The hospital room was dim when I arrived. The only sound the steady beep of monitors. She was barely conscious, but her eyes focused when I entered the room. What she told me next shattered everything I thought I knew. Between labored breaths, she admitted to systematically poisoning our son against me from the moment we separated. It wasn't just passive comments or subtle manipulation. It was a calculated, years-long campaign to destroy my relationship with my child. She told him I had another family I loved more, even created fake social media profiles and staged photos to prove it. She convinced him I'd said horrible things about him, showing him fabricated emails and texts where I supposedly rejected him. She went as far as intercepting and destroying every letter and card I'd sent, while telling him I never tried to contact him at all. She'd even kept a detailed journal of her lies, using it to keep her story straight and make the deception more believable. When he'd express doubts or missing me, she'd remind him of things I'd done, events that never happened, words I'd never said. She admitted to coaching him before court appearances, telling him what to say to the judge. All those times he'd run from me at school, she told him I was planning to kidnap him. The returned birthday cards? She told him I only sent them to look good to the courts. She cried as she confessed, saying the cancer made her realize the magnitude of what she'd done. The doctors had given her weeks, maybe days, and she couldn't bear to die with this secret. She'd already told our son the truth, she said. That's when I noticed him standing in the doorway behind me, tears streaming down his face. He looked so much like the little boy I'd lost, yet so different. A man now, carrying the weight of a truth that changed everything. The past 3 weeks have been surreal. My son and I have talked more than we have in 15 years. He brought over the journal his mother had kept, and we read through it together. Page after page of calculated lies, manipulated photos, scripted conversations. She'd even saved all my letters and cards in a box, while telling him I'd never sent any. The elaborate web of deception she'd created was staggering in its detail and cruelty. He's 22 now. We've lost so much time. There's anger there. At his mother, at the situation, maybe still a little at me for not somehow breaking through the lies. But there's also hope. We're seeing a family therapist together, trying to rebuild what was stolen from us. Last weekend, he came over and we just talked for hours. He asked about his childhood, about who I really am, about all the moments he missed. I showed him the box of photos and updates I'd kept. He cried when he saw birthday cards from years ago, realizing they matched the ones his mother had hidden. The healing process is complicated. Sometimes we'll be talking and he'll remember something his mother told him about me, then have to stop and ask if it was real or another lie. There are moments when I see him struggle with guilt over believing her, and I have to remind him that he was just a child, manipulated by someone he trusted completely. We're learning to navigate this new reality together, one conversation at a time. I'm sharing this because I want other parents going through alienation to know. Sometimes the truth does come out. Keep sending those cards. Keep leaving those messages. Keep love in your heart. Document everything, even if it seems hopeless. You never know when things might change. The wall of alienation can come down as suddenly as it went up. My ex passed away 2 days ago. I have complicated feelings about that. Part of me is angry, not just for what she did to me, but for what she did to our son. She robbed him of a father during his formative years, and now she's gone before he can fully process or understand why. Another part of me recognizes that her confession, however late, was an act of love for our son. She could have taken this secret to her grave, but she chose to give him the truth, even knowing it would change how he remembered her. It's strange how life works sometimes. The same event that took his mother from him also gave him his father back. We can't get those 15 years back, but we can make the most of whatever time we have left. Yesterday, he asked if we could start having regular Sunday dinners together. It's a small thing, but it means everything. I've learned that forgiveness isn't a single decision. It's a process. We're both working on forgiving. Him forgiving his mother for the lies, me forgiving her for the lost years, him forgiving himself for believing her, me forgiving myself for not finding a way to reach him sooner. But we're also learning to focus on the future rather than dwelling on the past. Edit. Thank you all for the support and awards. This post has reached more people than I ever expected. To those asking, yes, we're in therapy together and individually. It's helping us process everything and build a healthy relationship moving forward. And to the person who asked if I'm angry at my ex, honestly, I'm too focused on rebuilding my relationship with my son to waste energy on anger right now. Some things are more important than being right. Edit 2. For those asking about legal action, no, we're not pursuing anything. She's gone, and dragging this through the courts would only cause more pain. My son needs to heal, not relive the trauma through legal proceedings. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.